The government is briefing the media in Pretoria on the action it has taken on the United Arab Emirates president's current visit to the Eastern Cape. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan's huge entourage landed at the Bulembu airport last week for Ramadan celebrations. Let's take you live there.
Of Abu Dhabi, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and his entourage. And joining me is the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, Minister of Police, General Beki Cele, Minister of Agriculture, Ms. Togodi Diza. We are also going to be joined by the Minister of Transport, Ms. Sindisiwe Chikunga. She just had other commitments, but she will join us shortly. We are supported by the Directors General of the relevant departments, including the South African Revenue Services, as part of the parties that played a role in the facilitation of services. We have convened this media briefing to provide context to the private visit by the President of the United Arab Emirates, to whom government extended a number of courtesies that form part of our diplomatic engagement with all countries and our hosting of eminent persons. The public discussion on the visit by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and his entourage has generated a range of insinuation that suggested that something improper unfolded in the Eastern Cape's preparation for this visit by a prestigious guest to our country. We are here today to share with the nation that this visit has been possible with the diligence and integrity required of government as we interact with people from all walks of life, including people of the standing of the President of the UAE. South Africans are right to be vigilant about such matters, but our vigilance should not make us jump to worst assumptions and conclusions about our country or this administration. In terms of formal advance notification of the visit by the President of the United Arab Emirates was preceded by formal diplomatic correspondence from the UAE government to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. This formal correspondence sets out the intention of the President of the UAE to visit South Africa in his private capacity and indicated that he will be accompanied by a large entourage and that the President will be domiciled at a game reserve the President owns in the Eastern Cape. This correspondence reflects the respect shown and care taken by the President of the UAE in informing South Africa of the planned visit and allowing us to make the necessary arrangements in good time. The formal correspondence on the visit set in motion South Africa's preparation to extend to the President and his entourage courtesies and services in line with the internationally practiced hosting provisions of that countries offer heads of state or government and other dignitaries on a mutual basis. Part of the preparation for the President's visit to the Eastern Cape was the issuing by the Department of Home Affairs of visas to members of the entourage who needed visas to enter South Africa. Other members of the entourage carried passports from countries with whom South Africa has visa-free travel agreements. This means that the department can account for every one of the visitors accompanying the President. It is common for heads of state and government to visit South Africa privately, including for purposes of obtaining medical treatment. With such visits, the governments concerned will formally draw the attention of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to the planned visits. This advance notice allows departments and agencies of government to prepare for the delivery of their obligations. These obligations include a range of services and responsibilities, including the security of the head of state. Cheers. When such private visits take place, there's no requirement for public announcement about these occasions. Very often, heads of states undertake such visits to enjoy privacy away from their public roles and profiles of high visibility. Of course, different conditions apply where leaders visit South Africa in their official capacity and where states visits take place. Government consistently makes public announcement on these engagements. In terms of services and courtesies provided, upon the landing of the UAE flight, the Department of Transport processed the application for landing requests through the normal channels for such requests. In considering the request, the department took note that the Chicago Convention exempts state aircraft from international standards under this convention. However, despite the exemption, such aircraft remain subject to domestic regulations when operating at any civilian airport. Such compliance with aviation safety prescription was another key consideration the Department of Transport took into account, which required the necessary exemptions and approvals from the South African Civil Aviation Authority, which is the regulator of civil aviation. The Department of Transport also granted landing permits based on the fact that air transport was compliant for that operation, having considered requisite approval by the Department of Home Affairs. The Department of Transport is therefore satisfied that our laws have been followed to the letter in granting the necessary exemptions and approvals. And based on the formal correspondence directed to South Africa by the United Arab Emirates, a range of government departments and agencies that are normally part of such undertakings implemented a range of support services. The Minister of Home Affairs received an application to consider designation of Bulembu Airport in Bisho as a place of entry by His Highness and his entourage. Upon receipt of the request from the Eastern Cape, the Minister of Home Affairs considered all documents and granted the request and declared the airport as a temporary port of entry. Bisho Airport is wholly owned and operated by the Eastern Cape Provincial Government through their Department of Transport. In terms of arrivals, upon the arrival of the entourage, immigration services were rendered and all visitors, including His Highness, were in possession of the requisite visas. Some of the visitors only produced valid passports as they came from countries which visas are not required. As the visit involved international protocols and security, members of the South African Police Service, South African Revenue Service, customs officials, and officials of other relevant departments performed their respective statutory duties upon the arrival of the entourage. As the entourage departs, immigration services and all other relevant officials will be expected to provide similar services. SARS has been present on site at Bulembu Airport near Bisho since the commencement of the visit. SARS dispatched customs officers, including members of its dog detector unit and senior customs managers, to ensure compliance with customs formalities. In terms of security, upon receipt of information that the head of state of the UAE was visiting the Eastern Cape, all security measures necessary for heads of state were put in place, for example, presidential protectors and visibility. This is the case with all such visits. As we conclude, even though this visit is private, we have taken the step of sharing details with the nation because of the unfortunate and uninformed speculation we've seen around this visit, and which sought to foment suspicion about the visiting president and his entourage and about South Africa's management of this occasion. Public discussion on this visit by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and his entourage has generated a range of insinuations, which is something as if something improper it took place. South Africa welcomes the personal visit to the Eastern Cape by the President of the United Arab Emirates, whose interest in and enjoyment of our country is an important endorsement of our country's attractiveness as a destination and partner for investment, trade, and tourism. Given the United Arab Emirates' outstanding performance as a global investment in tourism in its own right, South Africa and the Eastern Cape stand to gain from continuous engagement with the UAE, which is also a source of outbound investment around the world. The hosting of the UAE president has conformed to international diplomatic standards and is fully compliant with South African laws. Thank you. We'll take the questions.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the comprehensive statement. We'll then invite questions, firstly from the House, and then later on we'll go to the platform online. As usual protocols, when we point at you, you would introduce yourself and your media house and then ask the questions. Thank you.
From the SABC. I have a number of questions. The first one, it relates to the goods that were brought into the country. There are reports that they brought goods to the country, clearly in the form of food, herbs, or foreign currency, where the goods declared, particularly the currency. The second question, in relation to the port of entry, was it a direct flight from Dubai to Eastern Cape, or there was a landing in one of the major international airports then to Eastern Cape? And the people with passports who don't have to present visas or to have visas, can you kindly share those countries? And finally, based on the past experience of the Gupta landing and Waterloo, does government accept that perhaps it was justified for the nation to panic because we've been here before? And finally, this is a country that is not willing to cooperate with South Africa in relation of extradition of the Guptas, which could also contribute towards South Africans being worried about this, because we were still dealing with the issue of the Guptas after it was announced that the courts have declined to give permission to extradite the Guptas, and they are in the United Arab Emirates, the last time checked. So those issues, didn't government think that they may also contribute to people panicking or asking questions?
Thank you very much, Sophie, for the questions. May I check if we have any questions online? Tagaladi?
Thank you. So far, we don't have questions online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. The statement was clear. Those are the questions from Sophie from the SABC. Thank you.
The question is, the people who accompanied the president of UAE, who were having passports but don't need visas, am I correct? Yes, you might remember, Sophie, that in my maiden budget speech in 2019, I announced 6 countries that are now allowed to come visa-free into the Republic of South Africa. It was Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Ghana, Cuba, Sao Tome and Principe. So people, ordinary visitors from Saudi Arabia, whether they accompany the president or not, do not need visas. But the president was also accompanied by people from other countries which need visas. These were people from 32 different countries around the world, those who need visas to enter South Africa, and we give them. Furthermore, he was accompanied by some people from US, Europe, and Canada. And as you know, people from US, Europe, and Canada do not need visas to enter South Africa. But all those who needed the visas, those visas were issued in our embassy in Abu Dhabi. Thank you. No, you asked if this was a direct flight. I'm sure Department of Transport can answer that question, but to my knowledge, yes, it was a direct flight. I don't know of any other country or any other place where they landed. In fact, part of the reason why a request was made to declare that place a port of entry is because the flight could land at OR Tambo, it could land in Cape Town International Airport, it could land in Kinshasa, but they wanted to land directly in the Eastern Cape because of the amount of cargo and the issues on logistics that they were carrying. So that's why they wanted to land in the Eastern Cape. But otherwise, we don't know of them landing in any other country before landing here. But in South Africa, yes, they landed only in the Eastern Cape. Thank you.
Can we have the representative of SARS coming to explain the customs?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. With regards to the issue of whether the goods were declared, yes, the goods were declared. Just for noting, this is actually a continuous process because similar goods will then have to be declared both in terms of import and also export process. And there was no currency that was actually found because we actually conducted all full inspection as per the media brief that the minister has actually provided. Thank you. I have to apologize, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keisha Sintumule. I'm actually the head of air modality in SARS Customs. Thank you.
There are issues that were raised to say the basis of concern is experience. That's why we took this time to come and explain the matters. But secondly, you raised a genuine issue to say the worry was exacerbated by the lack of cooperation. We must assure you that the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services is due to engage with the ambassador of the UAE on the issues that they did not do, why South Africa was not kept abreast with the developments in the UAE, because unlike us, their courts are not open, so nobody would have known that the matter is sitting, but also to say, how do we take the process forward? So after our expression of our disquiet, they reached out to say, let's engage and let's salvage the matter. That's why in the previous briefing, I've indicated that we continue on with confidence that the Guptas will be brought back to this country, and they are engaging with us. We are engaging with them on how we remedy the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ministers. I think we'll take the last round from our online platform of the questions. Tagalani.
Thank you. We now have a question from Erica Gibson from the report and City Press. And the question is, could you elaborate on the hunting guns and ammunition which were brought in? Were those all listed and accounted for? And could you indicate how many weapons the sub said to approve or to register and for how much ammunition? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ministers. These were the last questions that we are taking on this round. They had to do with the ammunition and the arms. So Minister Kele will take over. Thank you.
Yes, were hunting guns brought in. They were going to hunt. So they brought some hunting guns. The whole lot of guns that they brought were not allowed to come in the country, except a very limited number of firearms that came and limited number of ammunition according to the South African laws. To do that, the special convoy or the special police that deals on the arms issues were sent under the leadership of the Provincial Commissioner of Eastern Cape to make sure that everything is according to the law, is according to the Firearms Act of the Republic of South Africa. So everything's in order. Thanks.
Ministers, thank you very much for the time that you took from your busy schedule to clarify this matter to South Africans. Colleagues, thank you very much for coming to this briefing. This brings us to the end of this briefing. And those who might prefer a one-on-one, I think the MLOs of the ministers are inside. You can interact with them and they will facilitate that. Thank you very much and have a nice long weekend.
So those are live visuals coming through on the back of that briefing. Government having briefed the media in Pretoria on the action it has taken on the United Arab Emirates president's current visit to the Eastern Cape and whether proper procedure was followed. Again, various ministers in attendance to answer all those questions and more.